So this video is going to be a little bit of information. I'll try to keep it briefer than my previous video last week. There's going to be some information leading into peer review for week 6. I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, just some general, um, an overview of peer review, talk about maybe some expectations, some best practices. Um, Everybody probably has, if you've had experience with peer review, you've probably had, if we were to take a poll in the class, a wide variety of experiences, some positive and maybe some not so positive. I can tell you from an instructor's point of view, it's pretty challenging to pull off successful peer review. I try to fine tune things. I try to make adjustments when I think it would be helpful. But a big part of peer review is um, it's participating. It's doing the work. And unfortunately, a lot of times, not everybody's willing to participate fully. So I'm going to do my best. Part of that looks like me making a video talking to you about it. So, some of the main reasons why peer review isn't as successful as it could be. Um, a lot of times there's not enough time. So there have been times, especially early on when I started teaching, that I would try to do peer review in a very short class, and we just need time often. So I want to, one of the benefits, one of the advantages of being in this online class is that you're going to have plenty of time to work on this. You'll have, most of week 6. So I'm going to say this a number of times probably. Try not to put things off till the last minute. The longer you put things off, the less time everybody has to participate, and that just it makes it strained, and it contributes to an overall potential for not being successful. Lack of focus. I've crafted some peer review questions. Some of you have already looked at them. We'll talk about them briefly here in a little bit. Expectations, are they reasonable or not? And this all has to do with participation and buy-in once again. Um, so we've talked a little bit about timing. I'm going to go over the directions for peer review in our blog this week. So that'll make a little bit more sense. But once again, I'm leaving you a lot of time to work on this. I've been reminding you, we've been working on for the last few weeks, elements of our second paper. Drafting, hopefully if you've been doing your work and you've been listening to my announcements and emails and messages, and you should have a rough draft pretty close to being in order. Hopefully that's not going to be an issue this week. Um, so providing your class, when it comes to, you're going to see your classmates' rough draft posted on the blog this week. And that's how we're going to do peer review. It's really easy a lot of times. I don't know, easy is not the right word. It happens a lot that when we encounter our classmates' rough drafts, that we'll start saying things like, "Oh, this is great. I really like this. This works." But there's just so little follow through. There's so little additional detail. There's nothing wrong with liking your classmates' work. But why don't you take an opportunity to explain fully in detail why you like their work, how you see it being a successful response to the second paper prompt. Um, or, conversely, if you find something that looks underdeveloped or you feel like could be made more effective, of course you're going to want to explain that as well. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but the question sheet that I provided you all, the questions are intended to have you elaborate your feelings, expand your thinking, as you are reading through and commenting on your classmates' rough draft. So please be prepared for that. This is not going to work too well. And what I mean by that is that the amount of credit you're going to get for this week's assignment is going to hinge greatly on, are you providing one-line answers to your classmates, or are you actually engaging with it and spending some time with it? So one thing, there's a misunderstanding, and this goes back up to here to expectations, whether they're reasonable or not. Peer review is not meant for your classmates to find errors in your paper and correct them. This is not what peer review means to me, in other words. Let me just say it like that. It's not about editing your classmates' work. As we'll see in a little bit when we go over the peer review questions, what we're doing is we're providing our classmates an audience. We're reading their papers, their rough drafts, and we are commenting on the extent to which we think their rough drafts are addressing the second paper prompt. You know, you and this goes down to another issue here. A lot of times students will feel, I know I felt like this at times a long time ago when I was doing writing classes. We don't need to be experts. I'm not asking you to be experts, neither are your classmates. For example, if you are reading your students' rough draft and to your sensibilities, you don't think they included a summary, which is a big part of the second paper, just say that. It's okay. Your class, the person who wrote the paper, maybe they did. Maybe you just didn't recognize it. It's okay. If you can't detect a summary, maybe say that. It will give the person's paper that you are reading an opportunity to go back and say, this person couldn't detect my summary. Maybe I ought to go back and make it clearer. So whether or not we were actually right or correct about the things we say, that's not really the point of peer review either. Remember, we're not correcting, we're not fixing anything. We're offering a reaction, a response. We're offering some feedback to our classmates. That's all we're doing. And you don't need to be expert. You don't need to, you just need to be able to express and articulate how you see the paper. That's it. Let's see, what else can I say about this? I'm going to post this document, I think, in our course contents folder. So um, there were just a few things I wanted to highlight in here. That's basically it. It's don't worry about any of us being expert enough. That's not the issue. We're not fixing or correcting anything. We're giving our honest and authentic reaction and response to our classmates' work. Um, we're going to avoid one-liners and generalities and platitudes, and we're going to offer some concrete substance um, as we give comments and feedback to our classmates. So that's what we're doing here. This little reminder regarding peer review. Um, let's take a look at those questions. How about that? Again, these have been up for a few days now in our Blackboard shell. But so just like what we were talking about, provide feedback on the overall efficacy of the introduction to the rough draft you are working on. Here, you may rely on whatever resources, that is, our textbook reading, discussion we've been having the last few weeks, um, your own knowledge and experience. Even the PowerPoints, PowerPoint that I've included might be helpful here. What we're Take a look at the second paper prompt if it's not fresh in your mind, and what are the different elements? What are the different things that we ought to be doing in an introduction? And to the best of your knowledge, did the rough draft you were looking at do those things? Um, so it's not, this is not just a yes or no answer. This is, yes, they did these things, or Not really even a yes or no. We're talking about efficacy. We can say the introduction that I'm reviewing is effective because, or the introduction I'm reviewing is less than effective because. You always want to throw because in there and then have some reasons for why you are drawing the conclusion that you are. Um, I'll just say right here, each one of these questions, um, seven of them, I don't know, a paragraph for each of these. You don't have to take up a full page for each one of these, but three, four, five sentences at least. Again, avoiding one-liners, avoiding I liked it a lot, um, or it needs work. Get into providing some support and some details for why you conclude as you do. Um, by the way, I'll probably mention this again when we talk about the directions here for our peer review. You can either, in your response to your classmates, when you read their rough draft, you can either, copy these questions out and paste them into the text box as part of your response and then just type out answers. Some students will either print this out or fill it out on their computer or their device and then do a screen grab or take a picture of it even with your phone and post it here. Whatever you do, please have it be legible. Please have it be easily readable. Please don't have us go hunting around for links and things like that. Have something readily accessible and clear for us, especially for your classmates. Okay. What is the central claim, main idea, or thesis statement? I want you to identify it in the rough draft. That is, if we work in person, I'd have you underline it or highlight it or something. This way, with what we're doing, you could just copy it down, put it in quotation marks, and include it as in part of your response for question two. There doesn't need to be a whole lot of discussion um, about this other than here. So I'm not asking you to really evaluate it, the thesis statement. But what I would like you to do, or the main idea, aka the thesis statement, does it do any of this? Does it tell you, does it serve as a roadmap? Does it indicate what is coming up next in the body of the paper? So this, if it doesn't, you could say that and maybe explain a little bit why you think that. Hopefully, your main idea or your thesis statement, if you want to call it that for now, will have some sort of hint, some sort of indication of what's to come. And then you can include that as part of your question to response. To what extent, again, here we're talking about does it do it or not? Um, does your classmates' paper successfully or effectively summarize their article? Explain in detail. Put examples. If you think no, not to a very great extent, does your classmate summarize their chosen article? Plenty of details why. If you think yes, they have, again, plenty of details why. Describe how the rough draft is organized. Um, and then what the different parts do. Sometimes students will come in with just an entire wall of text and it utterly lacks organization. And you can talk about that. You can talk about how it was difficult to figure it out. There were no paragraph breaks. One section seemed to bleed right into the next. Or in contrast to that, if you have a rough draft in front of you that has neat and tidy paragraphs, topic sentences, each one sort of um, in one way or another announces or indicates what it's going to be about in that topic sentence, you'll want to make note of these things. Again, all of this feedback is intended to help the person who wrote the rough draft you are reviewing. It's intended to help them get an idea whether or not they're on track with their rough draft. Sometimes it helps a student to hear, even if their paper is relatively successful, it helps to hear that because they may be sitting there wondering or worrying or being insecure about their writing. And to have you say, no, things are going pretty good. Here's a bunch of examples and here's some concrete details why I think that. That's reassuring to your classmate. And that's that's being a good teammate. That's making the most of your collaborative efforts. At the same time, if the person who wrote the rough draft you're reviewing needs some work, needs to revisit some things, of course they're going to want to know that too. So once again, that's why we're doing this. We're not experts. We're not fixing or correcting. We're offering a reaction and a response. Um, Number five here, to what extent does the rough draft you review in response respond to the prompt overall? Um, so strongly responds, critically responds, or speaks back. Remember in the example second paper, the video we talked about there, um, a lot of times students will make this mistake of choosing a source that that they happen to agree with. And it's difficult to respond strongly or critically to that. It's difficult to speak back to it. It's not impossible. Once again, we covered that a little bit. But you'll want to be on the lookout for any evidence of this. Are you left with the sense after reading the rough draft that your classmate's rough draft is responding critically to the source, not just to a topic, not just to an issue, but to the actual source? They could have a very strong, effective paper, but they may just be describing what their source says or articulating what their source says if they agree with it. That's not the task in the second paper. We are supposed to be responding strongly or critically or speaking back to our source, to the author. And so this is your chance here to give your thoughts on that. I want you to identify what you think the strongest part is, the strongest, the part of the rough draft you're reviewing that you could sort of take a step back and say, yeah, that is by far the most effective thing that they did, the most effective part that they executed, whether it's, the intro, whether it's the speaking back or whatever it happens to be. Provide plenty of evidence for that too. And on the flip side, um, what's what's at least one of the main ways you feel like the rough draft could be more effective in responding to the prompt? Here, if students are omitting a significant part, sometimes students will just dive right in with a summary and completely omit the introduction. So that's something that could go here. Um, like we talked about a moment ago, if you feel like the student is not responding to the source or to the author speaking back, you may offer some additional thoughts here. Um, Whatever you do in this with this peer review question sheet, though, please try to err on the side of elaborating. Try not to go bare bones. We're only going to do this once for each of the papers we write, and I realize it's a pretty significant investment in time. But this is really all we're going to be doing this week. You're going to be working on finalizing your rough drafts, and we're going to do this peer review. So put some good effort into it. The more it's not just helpful for your classmates. When you get into the habit of looking at text, looking at writing, and thinking to yourself, is it effective or not? It doesn't really matter if you're right or wrong or anything. It gets you into the habit of looking at things with an evaluative eye. And that's very, very important, whether it's in writing classes like this, or I would say in any other major, and really in life. It's good to have that evaluative lens. Okay, let's briefly talk here about our blog instructions for the week. So this is similar to what we'd be doing. I've tried to approximate face-to-face peer review because it tends to be a little more successful than online. And once again, it's because usually people who show up for class in person are going to be participating. Otherwise, they're just going to be sort of sitting at their desk doing nothing. Um, I used to actually have this assignment be a little bit more complicated, so I've tried to streamline it a bit. It's really two steps, step one and two. Step one is post your rough draft. So by the due date, which is going to be Friday, What is that? The 26th. By the 26th, post your rough draft. Please don't just post a link to Google Docs or to whatever other links you guys use. Um, there's compatibility and accessibility issues with that. I want you to do two things. I want you to attach either a PDF or a Word document, and I also want you to type out or copy and paste your rough draft into the text box. All right. Um, I know this is a couple of extra steps, but we need everybody to be able to read everybody's work. And this is the one of the only ways I can think of ensuring that. Um, Otherwise, we're going to have people emailing me, I can't access so and so's link. I'm going to have to track it down, and it by that time we've wasted half the week. So please attach and type out your rough draft. Um, this doesn't have to be your final draft that you're going to turn in. This doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that. This has to be your best effort at this point. Um, Unfortunately, sometimes that means that it's incomplete. And what that means is that you're not going to get feedback on all parts of your paper. So if you are hoping to get the most out of this, try to have as complete a rough draft as you can so that when students go over here, your classmates go over here and try to respond to all the parts of your second paper, you'll be in good shape with that. So after you have posted as your response, you'll go down here. You'll copy and paste, and then you'll also attach. After you've done that, then comes the second half, really, and it's a big half. Just like every week when we do discussion boards, and you know you're going to get credit or not, whether you participate, whether you engage with your classmates, and I'm going to start holding you more accountable for meaningful engagement, not just these one-liners I've been seeing. That's especially true with peer review. Um, you're gonna apply or reply to at least two of your classmates, and two is fine. Don't feel like you need to respond to two or three or five or something like that. Two's fine. If you want to do more, that'd be great, but it's a lot of work. I admit it. Well before the second papers are due, which will be in a week or thereabouts. You'll probably be seeing this tomorrow. Um, in other words, please don't wait till the last minute. If everybody waits till the last minute, once again, that's just like a domino effect. Nobody can see their feedback, nobody can make adjustments to their papers, and it's almost like, why did we go through this? You know, I know it's overly optimistic perhaps to think that everybody will be ready to go by, say, Tuesday, but please try not to wait till Friday at 10 p.m. to post your rough drafts. That's pretty brutal. Um, I know everybody's got stuff to do, everyone's got a life, so you know, I'm not gonna I could have made the due date on Tuesday if I wanted to. I'm making it on Friday. I understand that we need a little bit of time, perhaps, but just do your best to try and get things done early. Um, After you have posted your rough draft, you're going to read through your classmates' blog posts. Um, if you happen to finish first or in the, you know, among the first few who finish, you'll probably notice there aren't very many options to choose from. And that's okay. You can either wait a little bit longer for more classmates to submit their rough drafts, or you can just go with a few that are available. But I want you to scroll through and I want you to select two of them that you would like to engage with. In other words, that you'd like to fill out this question sheet for. When you select these rough drafts, obviously it's going to take you some time to generate some responses to this. So, in order to avoid too many people potentially selecting the same rough drafts, and you know, one rough draft has uh, five or seven responses, and two other people have zero. These middle parts of the instructions here, I want you to pay careful attention to. Um, in order to avoid that, I want when you find a rough draft that you want to work with, please just jot down um, your name underneath their rough draft. Just all you got to do is come down, type your name out, and hit post as a comment to theirs, not as a response to this post, as a comment to their rough draft. What that does is you're going to be reserving a spot to peer review that paper. Then you can take time in generating your responses to this question sheet. In other words, if you are looking through, scrolling through, and you're finding rough drafts, and you already see that, two other people have left their name underneath a rough draft, please don't choose that one. Two other people have already committed to working on that one. Go look for another one. Again, this action of reserving our spot and then taking some time and filling this out and coming back, adding another comment with our response. This ensures that everybody is going to receive some comments or some feedback, that no one rough draft gets all the attention and others get no attention. That's not fair. That's not what peer review is for. Um, everybody needs to have feedback. Here's the let me boil it down. And this probably will sound a little harsh. If you do post, reserve a spot and post feedback when a rough draft already has enough people, you're basically not going to get credit for responding. I mean, that sounds awful, but what you're doing with that is you are taking away from somebody else. So please make sure you reserve your spot by typing your name out, come back to it later, add another comment, put your feedback with this question sheet on there. Um, and this one's even harsher. If you come into peer review, post your rough draft, and do not respond to anybody, you're basically going to get a 0 for the week because now you are pulling attention away from somebody else who may be participating, and that's really unfair. So if you don't intend on doing this question sheet for a couple of your classmates, providing them feedback, you might as well sit out the week because that's not how peer review works. Okay, so um, let's see here. What else do I want to say about this? When it comes to yeah, we already talked about this. When it comes to the peer review sheet, you could just copy and paste the questions into your response down here. Um, Or you can fill it out separately and either attach it or take a picture of it and put the image in here. Again, make sure it's clear and legible. Please don't have us go hunting around for links and following links. All right, this is due on Friday. It's a day sooner, a day earlier than our typical blogs are due, and that's because once again we need time. We need time to consider the feedback that our classmates are going to give us. So if you that extra day is going to be very valuable. Please don't wait everybody till Friday. Um, that's just everything's gonna be a log jam if we do that. Responses to your classmate are going to be due on Saturday, instead of like we typically have done Sundays. And that's because our papers are due on Sunday, the following day after this. So get your rough drafts posted early, comment on them early. That way, everybody will have plenty of time to make some adjustments and finalize their rough drafts and be able to have plenty of time to get them squared away, so that they're due on Sunday. Okay, I have a feeling this video is going to be just as long as the last one. That's all I really wanted to say about this. I just wanted to give you a heads up, a little bit of a talk before we do peer review. Please be in touch with me if you got any questions, concerns, things aren't clear. It's a little bit challenging, like I said, to do peer review online, but based on the way that much of the discussion has gone, I've got a lot of faith in y'all. All right. I will see you during week 6.